The text came through at 6:47 a.m., jolting me awake before my alarm. I grabbed my phone from the nightstand, squinting at the bright screen. It was from Marcus, my older brother. Cancel your Paris trip. Need you to watch the kids this weekend. Already told them Aunt Claire is coming. They're excited. I read it twice, certain I was misunderstanding. My Paris trip. The one I'd been planning for 8 months. The one I'd saved nearly $3,000 for, the one that was supposed to start tomorrow morning. He expected me to just cancel it? No question mark. No please, or if possible. Just a flat demand, as if my life existed solely to accommodate his schedule. I sat up in bed, my heart pounding with a mixture of shock and fury. This wasn't the first time Marcus had done this. Over the past 5 years I'd canceled dinner plans, missed a friend's wedding, and postponed a work training because he needed me to babysit. Each time I told myself it was just this once, that family came first, that being a good aunt meant making sacrifices. But Paris wasn't just another dinner reservation. It was my dream trip, carefully researched and meticulously planned. I'd booked the flights during a sale, reserved a charming hotel in Montmartre, and created a detailed itinerary of museums and cafes I'd wanted to visit since college. My hands shook as I set the phone down without responding. I got out of bed and walked to my kitchen, making coffee with mechanical movements while my mind raced. The audacity of Marcus's message kept replaying in my head. He hadn't even asked if I had plans. He'd simply assumed, decided, that whatever I was doing could be dropped for his convenience. My name is Claire Cuddle, and this is how my older brother tried canceling my trip to watch his kids. As the coffee brewed, I thought about the pattern of our relationship. Marcus was 3 years older, and somewhere along the way he'd developed this belief that his needs automatically superseded mine. When had I allowed this dynamic to become so entrenched? When had I stopped being his equal and become his backup plan? I poured my coffee and sat at the small dining table staring at my phone. Part of me wanted to respond immediately with anger, but I knew that wouldn't accomplish anything. Marcus had a talent for making me feel guilty, for twisting situations until I questioned my own reactions. I'm just asking for help, he'd say. Family is supposed to support each other. As if support only flowed in one direction. The sun was starting to rise, casting pale light through my apartment windows. Tomorrow at this time I was supposed to be on a plane, watching that same sunrise from 30,000 feet. I'd been counting down the days for months, checking and rechecking my packing list, practicing basic French phrases. I picked up my phone again and reread his message. The presumption in every word made my blood boil hotter. By 9 o'clock, Marcus still hadn't sent a follow-up message. No, how does that sound? Or, let me know if you can. Just silence, as if my compliance was so assured it didn't require confirmation. That somehow made it worse. I opened our text thread and scrolled back through months of conversations. The pattern was unmistakable. Marcus asking for favors, me agreeing, him taking it for granted. Can you pick up the kids from school Tuesday? Need you to stay late Friday, got a work thing. The babysitter canceled, can you cover? Never once had he asked about my schedule first. Never once had he offered to return the favor. I thought about calling my best friend Vanessa for advice, but I already knew what she'd say. She'd been telling me for years that I let Marcus walk all over me. You're not his employee, Claire, she'd said after I'd missed her birthday party last year to watch his kids. You're his sister. There's a difference. But standing up to Marcus felt impossible. He had a way of making me feel selfish for having boundaries, unreasonable for prioritizing my own life. And there was always the family pressure. Mom saying be patient with him, Dad suggesting I help out where I could. They meant well, but their enabling had created a monster. I made myself breakfast but couldn't eat more than a few bites. My stomach was twisted in knots. The trip was tomorrow. Tomorrow. If I was going to cancel, I needed to do it soon to get any refund at all. But why should I cancel? At 10:30 my phone rang. Marcus. I stared at his name on the screen, my thumb hovering over the decline button. Then I answered. Hey, I said, keeping my voice neutral. Did you see my text? He asked, not bothering with pleasantries. I sent it hours ago. I saw it. Okay, so you're good for this weekend? Jessica and I really need this time. Her sister is getting married in Denver and we can't bring the kids to the ceremony. You know how it is. I closed my eyes, willing myself to stay calm. Marcus, I have plans this weekend. There was a pause. What plans? I'm going to Paris. I've had this trip booked for 8 months. He laughed, actually laughed. Paris? Claire, come on. You can go to Paris anytime. The kids are expecting you. I already told them you'd be there. That was your mistake, I said quietly. You told them without asking me first. I didn't think I needed to ask, he said, his tone shifting to annoyance. It's one weekend. You're being dramatic about a vacation. It's not just a vacation. It's something I've been planning and saving for. I'm not canceling it. Yes, you are, he said firmly. Because that's what family does. They show up when they're needed. Mom and Dad would be really disappointed if they knew you were choosing a trip over your nephews. And there it was, the guilt trip right on schedule. The invocation of our parents, the suggestion that I was somehow failing as an aunt and a daughter. My hands clenched into fists. I'm not canceling, Marcus. He hung up without another word. But before I continue with what happened next, if you are enjoying this story, please like and share. I sat in silence for several minutes after the call ended, my heart racing. I'd never refused him so directly before. There'd been times I'd made excuses, work obligations I couldn't get out of, prior commitments I couldn't break. But I'd always softened the blow, always apologized profusely, always offered alternative dates. This time felt different. This time I'd simply said no. My phone buzzed with a text. Marcus again. You're really going to do this? Choose a vacation over your family? Wow. I typed and deleted 3 different responses before finally settling on. I've canceled plans for you 17 times in the past 3 years. I have a right to my own life. His response came immediately. Are you seriously counting? That's pathetic. I didn't reply. Instead, I opened my laptop and pulled up my travel documents, making sure everything was in order. My flight left at 8:15 a.m. tomorrow. My hotel check-in was confirmed. My museum passes were purchased. Everything was ready. But as I reviewed the itinerary I'd crafted so carefully, I felt a knot of anxiety forming in my chest. Was I being selfish? Marcus had 2 young boys, 6-year-old Tyler and 8-year-old Cameron. They were sweet kids and I did love spending time with them. But was it my responsibility to drop everything whenever their father decided he needed help? I thought about Jessica, Marcus's wife. She was nice enough, but she'd adopted Marcus's attitude toward me, that I was the family backup plan, always available, always willing. Had she even tried to find another solution before Marcus texted me? My phone rang again. Marcus. I declined the call. The calls kept coming. 3 more in the span of 20 minutes, each one declined. Then the texts started flooding in. You're being incredibly selfish. The kids are going to be devastated. I can't believe you're doing this to your own nephews. Mom is going to hear about this. That last one made me pause. Of course he'd call Mom. That was his go-to move when he didn't get his way. Involve our mother, let her apply the pressure he couldn't. And it usually worked. Mom had a gift for making me feel guilty without saying anything explicitly harsh. Just disappointment wrapped in concern. I took a deep breath and called Mom before Marcus could get to her first. Claire, honey, she answered warmly. How are you? Excited about your trip. Actually, that's why I'm calling, I said. Marcus just asked me to cancel Paris to babysit this weekend. There was a long pause. Oh, well, did something come up? Is there an emergency? No emergency. Jessica's sister is getting married in Denver and they don't want to bring the kids. Another pause. I see. And you told him no? I did. Mom, I've been planning this trip for 8 months. I've saved for it. I've arranged time off work. I can't just cancel. Of course not, Mom said, but I heard the hesitation in her voice. Though I suppose Marcus must be in a bind if he's asking. He doesn't usually impose unless he really needs help. I almost laughed. Marcus didn't usually impose? He imposed constantly. But Mom had always had a blind spot where her eldest son was concerned. I'm not canceling my trip, I said firmly. I understand, sweetheart. You deserve your vacation. I'll talk to Marcus. We said goodbye and I felt slightly better. At least Mom hadn't outright taken his side. That afternoon I decided to go for a walk to clear my head. The weather was beautiful, sunny and warm, the kind of late spring day that made everything feel possible. I walked through my neighborhood park, watching families on picnic blankets and couples throwing frisbees, and I thought about how differently Marcus and I had turned out. Growing up, we'd been close. He'd been protective, funny, the kind of big brother who made sure no one messed with his little sister. But something had shifted when he got married and had kids. Suddenly, his world became the only world that mattered. His stress was the only stress worth acknowledging. His needs were the only needs worth meeting. Or maybe it hadn't been sudden at all. Maybe I'd just been too willing to accommodate him, training him to expect my constant availability. My phone buzzed in my pocket. Another text from Marcus. Dad wants to talk to you. I sighed. Of course Marcus had escalated to both parents. I called Dad before he could call me. Hey Pumpkin, Dad answered using his old nickname for me. Heard you've got quite the situation brewing. Marcus told you his version, I'm guessing. He mentioned you can't watch the boys this weekend. Said you have a trip planned. Paris. I've had it booked since last September. Oh. Dad was quiet for a moment. That's a big trip. Expensive too, I'd imagine. Very expensive. And non-refundable at this point. Well, that settles it then, Dad said simply. You go to Paris. Marcus will figure something out. He's a grown man with resources. He'll manage. I felt tears prick my eyes. Thanks, Dad. Don't let him bully you, Claire. You've earned this trip. After we hung up, I felt lighter. Dad's support meant everything. By evening, Marcus had called 6 more times. I'd ignored all of them. Then at 7:15 p.m., my phone rang with a number I didn't recognize. I answered cautiously. Claire. It was Jessica. Hi, Jessica. Listen, I don't know what's going on between you and Marcus, but this is really putting us in a difficult position. My sister's wedding is a big deal and we've had these plans for months. I felt anger flash through me. I've had my plans for months too. 8 months, actually. Marcus texted me this morning demanding I cancel. He didn't demand anything, Jessica said defensively. He asked for help. That's what family does. He didn't ask. He told me. There's a difference. Jessica sighed dramatically. You're really going to make us miss my sister's wedding over a vacation? I'm not making you miss anything. You can still go. You just need to find childcare that isn't me. At this late notice? That's almost impossible. Don't you care about the boys at all? The accusation stung, but I held firm. I love Tyler and Cameron. But I'm not their parent and I'm not their on-call babysitter. There are other options. You could bring them to Denver, hire someone local, ask another friend or family member. But canceling my trip shouldn't even be on the list of possibilities. Jessica's voice turned cold. Marcus was right about you. You've changed. You used to be so helpful. I used to be a doormat, I corrected. There's a difference. She hung up on me. I sat on my couch shaking. Standing up to Marcus was one thing. But Jessica piling on made me doubt myself again. Was I being unreasonable? That night I couldn't sleep. I kept checking my phone expecting more calls or messages, but there was only silence. The quiet felt ominous, like Marcus was regrouping for a bigger attack. At 2 a.m. I finally gave up on sleep and opened my laptop. I'd been keeping a journal sporadically for years and I pulled it up now, needing to sort through my thoughts. I started writing about the situation with Marcus, but as I typed, other memories surfaced. There was the time 3 years ago when I'd been up for a promotion at work. A big one that would have meant a significant raise and better title. But the week of my final interview, Marcus called saying he needed help. His regular babysitter had quit and he was desperate. Could I stay with the boys for a few evenings while he and Jessica interviewed replacements? I'd said yes, of course. And I'd missed 2 crucial networking events that week. Events where I could have made connections with the executives who'd be deciding on the promotion. I didn't get the job. Then there was the time I'd finally started dating again after a bad breakup. I'd met someone nice, someone I really liked. We had plans for a weekend trip to the mountains, our first real getaway together. But Marcus called the night before. Emergency, he'd said. Jessica's mother was in the hospital, and they needed to drive to Tucson immediately. Could I watch the boys? I'd canceled my trip. The relationship didn't survive the disappointment. Looking back, I wondered if Jessica's mother had even been that sick, or if it had been another manufactured crisis. How many times had I rearranged my life for Marcus? How many opportunities had I missed? I closed my laptop feeling sick. Morning came with startling clarity. I woke up at 6 feeling more resolved than I had in years. Today was the day before my trip. Tomorrow I'd be in Paris. Nothing Marcus said or did would change that. I made coffee and started my final packing, methodically checking items off my list. Passport, tickets, adapters, camera. Each item I placed in my suitcase felt like an act of defiance, a statement that I was choosing myself. At 8 a.m. my phone rang. Marcus again. I answered. What? I said, not bothering with pleasantries. I want you to think really carefully about what you're doing, Marcus said, his voice low and controlled. This is going to damage our relationship permanently. Is Paris really worth that? Is a wedding really worth destroying our relationship over? I countered. Because that's what you're doing, Marcus. You're the one making ultimatums. I'm not making ultimatums. I'm asking my sister for help. No, you're demanding your sister sacrifice something important to her because you failed to plan ahead. There's a difference. Failed to plan ahead? His voice rose. Jessica's sister just set the date 2 months ago. And you're telling me that in 2 months you couldn't find childcare? You couldn't ask anyone else? You couldn't bring the kids with you? I don't believe that, Marcus. I think you just expected me to say yes like I always do. Silence on the other end. Then, you know what? Fine. Don't watch the kids. But don't expect me to be there for you when you need something. When have you ever been there for me? I asked quietly. He hung up. I stood in my bedroom, phone in hand, and realized I was crying. Not from sadness but from relief. I'd finally said what I needed to say. An hour later Vanessa called. Please tell me you're still going to Paris and not caving to your brother. I'm still going, I confirmed. Thank God. Claire, I've been waiting years for you to stand up to him. How are you feeling? Honestly, terrified and liberated at the same time. Vanessa laughed. That's probably accurate. What did he say when you refused? I recounted the conversations, all of them. Marcus's initial demand, the phone calls, Jessica's guilt trip, even the conversation with my parents. I'm proud of you, Vanessa said when I finished. I know that wasn't easy, but you did the right thing. Marcus has been taking advantage of your kindness for years. I keep wondering if I'm being selfish though. Stop, Vanessa said firmly. You're not being selfish for having boundaries. You're not being selfish for taking a trip you planned and paid for. You're being reasonable. Marcus is being selfish for demanding you drop everything for him. We talked for another 30 minutes and by the time we hung up I felt steadier. Vanessa was right. I wasn't the problem here. I spent the rest of the day finishing my packing and tying up loose ends. I confirmed my flight one more time, set my out-of-office message at work, and arranged for a neighbor to water my plants. Everything was ready. At 6 p.m. my doorbell rang. I looked through the peephole and saw Marcus standing there looking disheveled. I opened the door but didn't invite him in. We need to talk, he said. Marcus pushed past me into my apartment before I could respond. I closed the door, annoyance flaring. You can't just barge in here, Marcus. We're family, he said as if that explained everything. Claire, please. I'm asking you, really asking you, to reconsider. Jessica's crying. The boys are confused about why Aunt Claire suddenly doesn't want to see them. This is tearing our family apart. I crossed my arms. I never said I didn't want to see them. I said I can't cancel my trip to babysit this specific weekend. It's the same thing to them. They don't understand the difference. Then explain it to them. Tell them that Aunt Claire has her own life and her own plans, and sometimes those plans can't change. That's an important lesson. Marcus ran his hand through his hair, looking genuinely stressed. For a moment I felt a pang of sympathy. But then I remembered all the times he'd shown no sympathy for my stress. What if I paid for you to reschedule your trip? He offered. Would that work? I stared at him. You think this is about money? Isn't it? I mean, if I cover the cost of rebooking. Marcus, it's not about money. It's about respect. It's about you treating me like a person with my own life instead of your personal servant. When was the last time you asked if I had plans before demanding I drop them? When was the last time you said thank you? When was the last time you offered to return a favor? He looked genuinely confused. I don't know what you're talking about. I always appreciate your help. Do you? Because it doesn't feel that way. It feels like you take me for granted. That's not fair, he protested. I'm dealing with a lot, work stress, 2 kids, a marriage. I'm doing my best. So am I, Marcus. And my best includes finally putting myself first. He shook his head. I don't even recognize you right now. What happened to my sister who cared about family? She's still here. She just learned that family should go both ways. Marcus left without another word, slamming my door hard enough to rattle the frame. After Marcus left, I ordered takeout and tried to distract myself with a movie, but I couldn't focus. My mind kept replaying our conversation, analyzing every word, wondering if I'd been too harsh. But then I'd remember the look on his face when I mentioned return favors. Genuine confusion, as if the concept had never occurred to him. That's what years of enabling had created. A relationship so imbalanced that Marcus couldn't even comprehend reciprocity. My phone buzzed. A text from Mom. Marcus came by. He's very upset. Are you sure you can't compromise? I typed back. I've been compromising for years, Mom. This time Marcus needs to compromise. She didn't respond. At 10 p.m. Tyler video called me. I answered and his sweet 8-year-old face filled my screen. Aunt Claire? Dad said you're not coming this weekend. My heart broke a little. That's right, buddy. I have a trip planned. I'm going to Paris. But we were going to play video games and make pancakes. I know and I'm sorry. But we'll do that another time, I promise. How about the weekend after I get back? Okay, he said, but he looked sad. Then Cameron's face appeared beside his brother's. Are you mad at Dad? Cameron asked bluntly. I chose my words carefully. I'm not mad. But sometimes grown-ups have plans they can't change, just like you can't skip school when you want to. Does that make sense? I guess so, Cameron said. Will you bring us something from Paris? I smiled. Absolutely. I'll find the perfect souvenirs for you both. After we hung up, I felt better. The boys weren't permanently damaged by this. They'd be fine. But then Marcus texted, Really? You're going to disappoint them like that? Promising gifts doesn't make up for abandoning them. I blocked his number. The next morning I woke at 5 a.m. buzzing with excitement and nerves. This was it, Paris Day. I got ready quickly, double-checked my documents one last time, and called a car to the airport. As I rode through the pre-dawn streets, my phone rang from an unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered. Claire, it's Jessica. Please don't hang up. I sighed. Jessica, I'm literally on my way to the airport right now. I know. I wanted to apologize. Marcus told me about your conversation last night and he was ranting about how ungrateful you are. But then I really thought about it and I realized he does this to me too. He makes decisions and expects everyone to just fall in line. I was stunned into silence. You were right, Jessica continued. We should have planned better. We should have asked you months ago or found other arrangements. And honestly, I don't think the kids even need to come to Denver. Marcus just didn't want to deal with finding a babysitter. Thank you for saying that, I said quietly. I'm going to talk to him. Things need to change. But Claire, don't cancel your trip. You deserve it. Have an amazing time in Paris. After we hung up, I felt lighter than I had in days. Maybe this situation would lead to real change in Marcus's behavior. Maybe not. But either way, I was done being his safety net. The airport was bustling with early morning travelers. I checked my bags, went through security and settled at my gate with a coffee. In 2 hours I'd be on a plane to Paris. The dream was actually happening. My phone buzzed one last time. Dad, bon voyage, pumpkin. So proud of you. I smiled and boarded my flight. Paris was everything I'd dreamed it would be. The first day I walked until my feet ached, soaking in the architecture, the language, the atmosphere that was so different from home. I visited Notre Dame, wandered through the Latin Quarter, and ate the most incredible croissant I'd ever tasted at a tiny cafe near my hotel. I posted photos on social media, not to rub anything in Marcus's face, but because I was genuinely happy. Friends commented with heart emojis and congratulations. Even Mom liked several posts. On my second day, I went to the Louvre and spent hours getting lost in its vast galleries. I stood in front of the Mona Lisa, jostled by crowds, and felt overwhelmed by the reality of being there. I'd almost given this up. I'd almost let Marcus guilt me into canceling. That evening, I sat at a sidewalk cafe in the Marais, drinking wine and people watching as the sun set over Paris. My phone had been mostly quiet. I'd turned off notifications, letting myself be present. But I checked it now and saw I'd missed several texts. One from Vanessa. Please tell me you're having the time of your life. One from Dad. Hope you're enjoying the city of light. And one from Jessica. Marcus finally found a babysitter. His coworker's daughter was available. We're in Denver. The boys are fine with Marcus's parents. Everything worked out. He's not happy about how it happened, but tough luck. Enjoy Paris. I smiled and ordered another glass of wine. Everything had worked out just as I'd known it would. Marcus had simply needed to try. The rest of my week in Paris was blissful. I visited Versailles, climbed the Eiffel Tower, explored Montmartre, and ate more cheese and bread than I thought humanly possible. I took hundreds of photos and filled a journal with observations and sketches. Most importantly, I felt like myself again. Not Marcus's sister or the backup babysitter, but Claire, a person with dreams and autonomy. When I returned home, tanned and exhausted and happy, I found a package waiting at my door. Inside were 2 children's books in French and a note from Jessica. For the boys. Thank you for standing your ground. It helped me do the same. I smiled and set them aside to give to Tyler and Cameron next time I saw them. Marcus, however, stayed silent. No welcome home text, no acknowledgement that I'd returned. The silence was telling. He was still angry, still nursing his wounded pride. I didn't reach out. If he wanted to repair our relationship, he'd need to make the first move. Days turned into a week. I settled back into my routine. Work, gym, dinners with friends. The Paris trip felt like both a dream and a turning point. I'd proven to myself that I could prioritize my own needs without the world ending. Then 2 weeks after my return, Marcus called. I debated not answering, but curiosity won. Hey, I said neutrally. Hey. He sounded tired. Can we talk? In person. We agreed to meet at a neutral coffee shop the next day. I arrived first and ordered a latte, choosing a table by the window. When Marcus walked in, he looked older somehow, more worn down. He sat across from me and was quiet for a long moment. I've been thinking a lot, he finally said. About what you said. About how I've treated you. I waited, not making it easy for him. Jessica really laid into me in Denver. She said I've been taking you for granted, that I treat you like hired help instead of my sister. And the more I thought about it, the more I realized she was right. Go on, I said. I'm sorry, Claire. I'm sorry for demanding you cancel your trip. I'm sorry for all the times I've expected you to drop everything for me. I'm sorry for not appreciating everything you've done. I studied him carefully. Do you understand why I said no? He nodded. You have your own life. Your own plans and dreams. I can't just expect you to put them on hold whenever it's convenient for me. That's right. I want to do better, Marcus said. I want us to have a real relationship again, not one where I'm always asking for favors and you're always giving up things. I felt something loosen in my chest. I want that too. We talked for over an hour, really talked about our relationship and the patterns we'd fallen into. Marcus admitted he'd felt overwhelmed as a parent and had leaned on me as a crutch. I admitted I'd enabled the behavior by never setting boundaries. Things need to change, I said firmly. I'm happy to spend time with Tyler and Cameron, but you need to ask in advance. And you need to accept that sometimes I'll say no. I understand. And Claire? How was Paris? I smiled. It was perfect. Over the following months, things genuinely improved. Marcus started asking instead of demanding. He gave me advance notice when he needed help. And most surprisingly, he started reciprocating, offering to help me move furniture, fixing my car when it had issues, even babysitting Vanessa's daughter so I could take her to a concert. People can change, I said. It just takes the right catalyst. And a sister brave enough to stand her ground. That evening, I looked through my Paris photos again, remembering the fear and determination I'd felt the morning I refused to cancel. I'd been terrified of Marcus's anger, of family judgment, of being labeled selfish. But I'd done it anyway. And look where it had led. To better relationships, personal growth, new opportunities, and most importantly, self-respect. As the new year began, I reflected on the past year's journey. It had started with a simple text message and a refusal, but it had evolved into something much larger. A reclamation of my life and identity. I'd learned that saying no wasn't selfish. It was necessary. I'd learned that people who truly love you will respect your boundaries, not resent them. I'd learned that guilt is a tool manipulative people use, and recognizing that was the first step to dismantling it. Most importantly, I'd learned that I was worthy of my own dreams and plans, that my life had value beyond what I could do for others. The Japan trip was now just 3 months away, and I was meticulously planning every detail. This time though there was no anxiety about potential interruptions. I knew my boundaries were solid and my family respected them. At work I was thriving. The promotion had led to new projects, more responsibility and genuine satisfaction. My team respected me partly because I'd learned to respect myself first. I started seeing someone, a kind, thoughtful man named Daniel who I'd met through mutual friends. We took things slowly but I appreciated his respect for my independence and boundaries. When I told him about the Marcus situation he'd nodded thoughtfully. "Sounds like you handled it perfectly," he'd said. "Standing up for yourself is attractive." I'd laughed but his words had stuck with me. Self-advocacy was attractive. It was powerful. It was necessary. On a cold January evening I met Marcus for coffee, just the two of us. He looked healthier, more relaxed than I'd seen him in years. "Jessica and I are going to counseling," he told me. "Working on communication and partnership. It's helping a lot." "That's great, Marcus." "It is. And Claire, I need you to know, what happened with Paris, what you did by refusing to back down. It saved more than just your trip. It saved my marriage, my relationship with my kids and my relationship with you. You gave me a wake-up call I desperately needed." I reached across the table and squeezed his hand. "I'm glad something good came from it. More than something. Everything." Spring arrived with the promise of cherry blossoms and new beginnings. My Japan trip was just 2 weeks away and this time the excitement was pure, untainted by worry or guilt. Tyler and Cameron were fascinated by my Japan plans. I showed them pictures of Tokyo, Kyoto and Mount Fuji. They asked endless questions about Japanese culture, food and traditions. "When you're older maybe we can all go together," I suggested and their faces lit up. "Really? You'd take us?" Tyler asked. "If your parents agree and we plan it properly, absolutely." Marcus, overhearing this conversation, smiled. "That would be amazing. A family trip to Japan." The fact that he saw it as a future possibility rather than an immediate demand showed how much he'd changed. He understood now that these things required planning, discussion and respect for everyone's schedules. Work threw me a surprise party before my trip, a thoughtful gesture from my team. They gave me a beautiful Japanese tea set and a guidebook filled with their personal recommendations from colleagues who'd visited Japan. "You've been such an incredible leader," my assistant said. "You deserve this trip and so much more." I felt overwhelmed with gratitude. A year ago I'd been drowning in obligations, unable to see past Marcus's demands. Now I was surrounded by people who celebrated my successes and respected my boundaries. Vanessa flew in for the weekend before my trip, and we had a girls' night celebrating my upcoming adventure. "Remember when you called me crying because you didn't know if you should cancel Paris?" she asked, wine glass in hand. "I remember. You told me I'd regret it forever if I did. And I was right. Look at everything that came from that one decision." "Everything," I agreed, thinking about the cascade of positive changes. We toasted to growth, to friendship and to the courage to choose ourselves. Japan exceeded every expectation. From the serene temples of Kyoto to the bustling streets of Tokyo, from the peaceful gardens to the incredible food, every moment felt like a gift I'd given myself. I met other travelers, shared stories and recommendations, explored ancient shrines and modern anime shops. I ate ramen at tiny counters and kaiseki dinners at traditional ryokans. I witnessed cherry blossoms in full bloom, understanding finally why people traveled across the world to see them. I thought about Marcus occasionally but without resentment. He'd sent me one text before my trip. "Have an incredible time. The boys and I can't wait to hear all about it." Short, supportive, appropriate. On my last night in Japan I sat in a quiet garden in Kyoto, watching the sun set over a pond filled with koi. I reflected on the journey that had brought me here, not just the physical journey to Japan, but the emotional and psychological journey from doormat to self-advocate. A year ago I would have cancelled this trip if Marcus had asked. I would have swallowed my disappointment, made excuses about why it was okay, and pretended I wasn't heartbroken. But that version of Claire was gone. In her place was someone stronger, more confident, more certain of her own worth. I pulled out the journal Marcus had given me and wrote, "Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is disappoint someone who expects you to sacrifice yourself. Sometimes love means saying no. Sometimes family means standing your ground. And sometimes, the trip you refuse to cancel becomes the turning point that changes everything." I closed the journal feeling at peace. Tomorrow I'd fly home to a life that finally felt authentically mine. Returning home felt different this time. Instead of dreading potential conflicts or obligations, I felt excited to share my experiences with my family and friends. Marcus, Jessica, and the boys picked me up from the airport, holding a welcome home Aunt Claire sign that the boys had decorated with drawings of cherry blossoms and MT Fuji. You guys. I laughed, hugging them all. We went to dinner and I showed them photos and told them stories about my adventures. Tyler and Cameron were fascinated by everything. The vending machines, the temples, the high-speed trains. I definitely want to go to Japan someday, Cameron declared. Then we'll make it happen, I promised. When you're a teenager, maybe. Marcus caught my eye and smiled. There was understanding there, gratitude and respect. Our relationship had been rebuilt on a foundation of mutual appreciation rather than one-sided obligation. Over the following weeks I settled back into my routine, but I felt fundamentally changed. The trips to Paris and Japan weren't just vacations. They were declarations of independence, reminders that I deserved to pursue my dreams. At work I continued to excel. My boss approached me about a potential director position opening up in 6 months. I think you'd be perfect for it, she said. You've shown incredible leadership and growth. I thanked her and felt a surge of pride. A year ago I might have hesitated, worried about taking on more responsibility. Now I knew I could handle it. I'd learned to prioritize effectively, set boundaries and advocate for myself. Daniel and I grew closer. He'd met Marcus and gotten along well, which mattered to me. But more importantly, he respected my independence and supported my ambitions. When I told him about the potential director position, he'd immediately said, "You should absolutely go for it." "What if it means less time together?" I'd asked. "Then we'll make the time we have count," he'd replied simply. "I'm not interested in holding you back from your dreams, Claire." That's when I knew he was different. A year after that fateful text message, Marcus called me on the anniversary date. "Do you realize what today is?" I checked my calendar and laughed. "The day you demanded I cancel Paris. The day you told me no and changed both our lives," he corrected. "I wanted to thank you again. This year has been the best year of my life, not despite that conflict but because of it." We talked for over an hour, reflecting on the journey we'd been on. The anger, the growth, the healing, the rebuilding. "You know what's funny?" Marcus said. "I thought you saying no would ruin our relationship. Instead it saved it. Because we finally dealt with the real issues instead of pretending everything was fine." "Exactly. And Claire, I'm planning a surprise for you." "What kind of surprise?" "The boys and I are planning a trip together, just the 3 of us. We're going to give Jessica a weekend completely off. I'm going to be the kind of dad and husband who doesn't rely on others to handle his responsibilities." I felt tears in my eyes. "Marcus, that's wonderful. I learned from the best," he said warmly. That evening I pulled out both journals, the one from Paris and the one from Japan. I added a new entry. "A year ago I was terrified to say no to my brother. Today our relationship is stronger than ever because I finally did." The lesson? True family doesn't fall apart when you set boundaries. It grows stronger. Real love doesn't demand sacrifice. It celebrates independence. And the right people will respect your choices, not resent them. I closed the journal and looked around my apartment, at the photos from Paris and Japan on my walls, at the career achievements I'd earned, at the life I'd built on my own terms. That text message from Marcus had felt like a crisis at the time. Now I recognized it for what it really was. A catalyst, an opportunity, a chance to finally choose myself. And I'd made the right choice.